Welcome to her true stories. If you love stories of resilience, transformation, and standing up for yourself, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content like this. Today's story proves it's never too late to discover your worth. My name is Mara Joshua, and I'm 76 years old. For most of my life, I believed that being a good mother meant disappearing into the background, making myself small so others could shine brighter. I was spectacularly wrong about that, but it took my daughter Rebecca and her husband David excluding me from their family vacation to finally open my eyes. Let me start at the beginning because context matters in stories like this. I've lived in the same house in Phoenix for 38 years, ever since my late husband Robert and I bought it when Rebecca was just 2 years old. Robert died of a heart attack when Rebecca was 12, leaving me to raise her alone while working as a high school English teacher. Those were lean years financially, but when my mother passed away 10 years ago, she left me a substantial inheritance, nearly $400,000 that I'd invested carefully with the help of a conservative financial advisor. I never told Rebecca about the inheritance. Not because I wanted to keep secrets, but because I'd grown up during the Depression and learned to save money for emergencies. What if I got sick? What if Rebecca needed help with Sophie's college fund? What if the market crashed? So the money sat in safe investments, earning modest returns while I continued living on my teacher's pension like I always had. Rebecca married David 8 years ago, and I tried my best to welcome him into our small family. David came from money. His father owned a chain of auto dealerships across Arizona, and his family was large, loud, and had very definite opinions about everything. His mother Martha always made little comments about my simple lifestyle and my quaint little house, while David's siblings treated me with polite indifference. But I told myself this was normal. Blended families took time to mesh, and I was just the mother-in-law after all. My role was to support Rebecca's happiness, even if that meant accepting that I'd never be truly welcomed into David's family circle. The pattern started small. Rebecca would call when she needed babysitting for 9-year-old Sophie, my granddaughter, but our conversations rarely extended beyond logistics. Can you pick up Sophie from school on Tuesday? We have a work thing. Could you watch her this weekend? David's parents want to take us out for dinner. Always asking, never offering. Always assuming I'd say yes, never considering that I might have plans of my own. Not that I usually did have plans. My social life had withered over the years as I'd focused more and more on being available for my family. My old teaching colleagues had drifted away after retirement, and I'd let friendships lapse because Rebecca might need something. I'd turn down invitations because what if there was an emergency? What if Sophie got sick at school and Rebecca couldn't leave work? I'd made myself indispensable by making myself invisible. The Thursday when everything changed started like any other. I was deadheading roses in my garden, a hobby I'd taken up to fill the empty hours, when my phone rang. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen, and I felt that familiar flutter of anxiety mixed with hope. Maybe she was calling just to chat. Maybe she wanted to grab lunch together. Maybe she was thinking about me as a person, not just as free childcare. Mom, I have the most exciting news. Rebecca's voice practically sparkled through the phone. David finally got that promotion to senior partner, and we're going to celebrate with that big family trip to Las Vegas we've been talking about. My heart lifted. We discussed this trip for months, ever since Sophie had seen a documentary about Las Vegas shows and become obsessed with the idea of seeing real magicians and acrobats. Rebecca had shown me brochures of family-friendly shows, talked about the museums and attractions we could visit together, even mentioned a spa day that might be fun for us girls. That's wonderful, honey, I said, setting down my gardening shears. When do we leave? I'll need to arrange for someone to water my garden, and I should probably. Actually, Mom, Rebecca interrupted, and I heard that slight shift in her tone that always made my stomach clench. That's what I need to talk to you about. David's family really wants to join us for this celebration, and you know how important family is to them. I did know. David's family was large and close-knit in the way that made me feel like an outsider looking in. His parents, Robert and Martha. His three brothers, Tom, Mark, and James, along with their wives and children. His sister Emma and her husband Brad, plus their two teenage sons. When they all got together, they filled rooms with their voices and their shared history and their inside jokes that I was never quite part of. How many people are we talking about? I asked, though I was already beginning to sense where this conversation was headed. Rebecca's pause stretched just a little too long. Well, with David's parents, his siblings, and their families, probably around 15 people total. 15 people. I did quick math in my head. With Rebecca, David, Sophie, and me, that would make 19 people. That's quite a group, I said carefully. Where are we all going to stay? That's the thing, Mom. Another pause. David found this amazing vacation rental house through his firm's corporate travel agent. It's supposed to be incredible, right on the strip, with a pool and game room and everything. But here it comes, I thought. But it only accommodates 15 people exactly. The bedrooms and everything are set up for that specific number. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I see. I'm so sorry, Mom. We really wanted you to come, but there just isn't space. The house is already booked and paid for, and changing it now would be impossible. Maybe we can plan something special, just the three of us, when we get back. I stood there in my garden, surrounded by the roses I'd spent 5 years cultivating, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. Of course, dear. I understand completely. You're amazing, Mom. I knew you'd understand. You always do. After I hung up, I sat heavily on my garden bench and stared at my hands. These hands had packed Rebecca's lunch every day for 12 years after Robert died. These hands had sewn her prom dress because we couldn't afford to buy one. These hands had held her during her difficult labor with Sophie, had babysit that same granddaughter countless times, had prepared dozens of holiday dinners for David's family even when they barely acknowledged my efforts. But apparently, there wasn't room for these hands on a family vacation. I tried to rationalize it. 15 people really was a lot to accommodate. Maybe the rental house truly couldn't fit any more guests. Maybe this was just one of those unfortunate situations where someone had to be excluded, and that someone happened to be me. I almost convinced myself until I remembered something Rebecca had mentioned weeks ago. David's sister Emma was going through a rough divorce and probably wouldn't be up for family events for a while. Yet somehow Emma and her husband were part of this 15-person count. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I looked up David's family on social media. I'd always been proud of not being one of those snoopy people who stalked others online, but tonight I felt compelled to investigate. It took me longer than it should have to navigate Facebook properly. Technology had never been my strong suit, but eventually I found David's brother Tom's profile. What I saw there made my blood run cold. Posted just 3 hours earlier was a photo of an enormous vacation rental house in Las Vegas. The caption read, "Can't wait for the Joshua family reunion. This place is going to be epic. 16 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms, private pool, game room, full kitchen staff. Room for up to 25 guests. 25 guests." I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Not only was there room for me, there was room for 9 additional people. I scrolled through the comments, my heart sinking further with each one. "So excited to finally have a family vacation," wrote Jennifer, Tom's wife. "The cousins are going to have such a blast," commented Mark's oldest daughter. And then, at the bottom, a comment from Martha, David's mother, that felt like a knife to the chest. Finally, a family vacation with just family. No outsiders to worry about accommodating.
No outsiders.
I was an outsider at my own daughter's family celebration. I closed the laptop and sat in my dark living room, surrounded by photos of Rebecca throughout the years. Rebecca's high school graduation, where I stood beaming beside her, because Robert hadn't lived to see it. Rebecca's wedding, where I'd walked her down the aisle since her father wasn't there. Rebecca in the hospital holding newborn Sophie, with me right beside the bed, tears of joy streaming down my face. In every photo, I was present, supportive, loving. But when it came time for making new memories in Las Vegas, I was just an outsider who didn't fit into their perfectly planned family unit. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, something sharp and unfamiliar growing in my chest. It wasn't just hurt anymore. It was anger. Clean, clarifying anger that made me see my situation with startling clarity. For 34 years, I'd been Rebecca's mother. I'd sacrificed, supported, and enabled. I'd made myself smaller and smaller to make everyone else more comfortable. I'd convinced myself that love meant never asking for anything in return. But love was supposed to be mutual, wasn't it? Love was supposed to include respect, consideration, basic human decency. What I'd been giving wasn't love. It was servitude. And what I'd been receiving in return wasn't love either. It was exploitation. As the first light of dawn crept through my bedroom windows, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to accept this. I wasn't going to smile and nod and pretend it was okay to be excluded from my own family's life. I was going to do something about it. I just wasn't sure what yet. The next morning brought another phone call from Rebecca, this time with her voice bubbling over with excitement about their upcoming travel plans. She rattled off details about the shows they planned to see, the restaurants David's family had researched, the pool parties they were organizing at the house. "It sounds wonderful," I managed to say, though each detail felt like salt in an open wound. "Oh, and Mom, I hate to ask this, but would you mind checking on our house while we're gone? You know, bringing in the mail, watering the plants, keeping an eye on things? We'll be leaving Sunday and won't be back for 8 days. Sunday. They were leaving in 2 days, and she was just telling me now about house-sitting duties. Of course, honey. You know I'm always happy to help. You're a lifesaver, Mom. I honestly don't know what we'd do without you." After she hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with my morning coffee and thought about that phrase. I don't know what we'd do without you. It sounded affectionate, but what it really meant was, I don't know how we'd manage our lives without your free labor. I'd become the family's unpaid employee, and I'd been so eager to be needed that I'd never noticed the difference between being valued and being used. My phone rang again, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed a name I hadn't seen in months, Helen Morrison. Helen had been my closest friend during my teaching years, and we'd stayed in touch after retirement until I'd started declining her invitations because Rebecca might need something. Helen was blunt, opinionated, and had never been afraid to tell me hard truths I didn't want to hear. "Mara Joshua," Helen's voice was sharp with mock indignation, "are you avoiding me?" "Of course not," I said, though we both knew it was partially true. "I've just been busy. Busy being taken advantage of by that daughter of yours, I'm sure. When's the last time we had lunch? When's the last time you did anything for yourself instead of jumping every time Rebecca calls?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "Helen, that's not fair. She's my daughter. Family comes first. Family should come first, yes. But that doesn't mean you should disappear. Tell me, what have you done for fun in the past month? What plans have you made that didn't revolve around your daughter's convenience?" I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't think of anything. When had I become so small? When had my entire identity shrunk down to being Rebecca's helpful mother? "That's what I thought," Helen said, but her voice was gentler now. "Mara, you're one of the most intelligent, interesting women I know. But you've been hiding that light under a bushel for so long, I think you've forgotten it exists." "I don't know what you mean." "I mean you have money saved up that you never spend on yourself. I mean Jack Morrison had been married to my friend Helen for 40 years before their amicable divorce 5 years ago. He was 78, recently retired from his successful law practice, and had always been one of my strongest advocates during the years when I was doubting myself. Mara? His voice was surprised but warm. Is everything okay? Jack, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Always am with you. You know that. Am I a doormat? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Jack, I'm here. I'm just trying to figure out how to answer that without hurting your feelings. That's a yes then. Mara, you're one of the kindest, most generous people I know. But there's a difference between being generous and being taken advantage of. I told him everything. About the Las Vegas trip, about being excluded despite the house accommodating 25 people, about finding the papers that proved this had been planned for months, without any consideration of including me. When I finished, Jack was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "What are you going to do about it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you going to keep pretending this is acceptable? Are you going to welcome them home with a smile and a casserole, pretending nothing happened? Or are you finally going to stand up for yourself?" I'd never heard Jack speak so directly about Rebecca before, and it should have made me defensive. Instead, it made me feel oddly relieved that someone else could see what I'd been trying to deny. "I don't know," I admitted. "Well, you've got 8 days to figure it out. And Mara, you deserve so much better than this. You've always deserved better." After I hung up, I sat in my car until the sun went down, thinking about Jack's question. What was I going to do about it? For 76 years, I'd been the woman who accommodated, who understood, who never made waves. I'd been the convenient mother, the reliable grandmother, the person everyone could count on to say yes. But what if I said no? What if I stopped being convenient and started being honest? What if I stopped hiding my light under a bushel and let everyone see exactly who I really was? The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. As I finally walked to my front door, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to confront Rebecca directly. I wasn't going to make accusations or demands. I was going to do something much more powerful. I was going to show her exactly what she'd chosen to exclude from her family celebration. I was going to Las Vegas. I spent the entire weekend in a state I can only describe as controlled fury. Not the explosive, destructive kind of anger, but the cold, clarifying kind that strips away illusions and shows you exactly where you stand. I wasn't just hurt by Rebecca's exclusion anymore. I was insulted by the transparent lies, offended by the casual disregard, and most of all, angry at myself for accepting this treatment for so long. Saturday morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Helen and made lunch plans. "It's about time," Helen said when I picked her up in my reliable but boring sedan. "You sounded different on the phone yesterday. More present." "I feel different," I admitted as we drove to our favorite restaurant, a place I hadn't been to in over a year because Rebecca might need something. Over salads and wine, I told Helen everything. About Las Vegas, about the papers I'd found, about my growing realization that I'd been enabling my own mistreatment for decades. "Good," Helen said bluntly when I finished. "I've been waiting for you to get angry for years." "You think anger is good?" "I think anger is information. It tells you when your boundaries have been violated, when you're not being treated with respect. The question is, what are you going to do with that information?" I took a sip of wine and felt something settle into place inside my chest. "I'm going to Las Vegas." Helen raised an eyebrow. "To confront them?"
No.
"To show them what they're missing." I explained my plan as it formed in my mind. I would go to Las Vegas, stay at the most expensive hotel, live like the sophisticated woman I'd always been but never allowed myself to be. I would document everything, not out of spite, but as proof that I was capable of more than they'd ever imagined. "Mara," Helen said slowly, "that's either brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. What if they see you?" I hope they do. Helen studied my face for a long moment, then smiled. You know what? I think this is exactly what you need. You've been hiding your light under a bushel for so long. Maybe it's time to let it shine. After lunch, Helen insisted on coming shopping with me. If you're going to make a statement, you need the wardrobe to match. We spent the afternoon at department stores I'd admired but never shopped in, trying on clothes that cost more than I used to spend in 3 months. A silk blouse in deep emerald that made my silver hair look elegant instead of just old. A tailored jacket that transformed my posture and made me stand taller. A cocktail dress that was sophisticated rather than matronly. My God, Mara, Helen said as I emerged from the dressing room in the cocktail dress. You look like you should have your own reality show. Is that good? It's magnificent. You look like a woman who knows her worth. Monday morning, I called my travel agent, Doris Patterson, who'd been helping me plan my modest annual trips for 15 years. Usually, I asked for budget-friendly options, small hotels during off-season, package deals, anything that kept costs reasonable. Not today. Doris, I want to go to Las Vegas, I said without preamble. Oh, how lovely. When were you thinking? Tomorrow. I want the best hotel you can find, the most expensive suite available. Money is no object. There was a pause. Mara, are you feeling all right? I looked around my beige living room with its safe, practical furniture and neutral colors. Everything chosen to be inoffensive, unnoticed, forgettable. I'm feeling like myself for the first time in years, I said. Can you make it happen? It took Doris 3 hours and several phone calls, but she managed to book me into the penthouse suite at the Bellagio for 5 days. When she quoted the price, I didn't even flinch. I'd been saving money for imaginary emergencies for so long that I'd forgotten I was allowed to spend it on actual living. But the hotel was just the beginning. I spent Monday afternoon making calls that would have seemed impossible a week ago. First-class flights. The first time I'd ever flown anything but coach. Dinner reservations at restaurants that required months of advance notice. A private shopping appointment at the Forum Shops. Spa treatments at facilities I'd only read about in magazines. And then, because I was apparently feeling completely reckless, I did one more thing. I hired a professional photographer. Marcus Kane specialized in luxury lifestyle photography, and his portfolio was full of images that looked like they belonged in magazines. Wealthy clients at exclusive events, sophisticated travelers in exotic locations, the kind of people who lived the life I'd always admired from a distance. Mrs. Joshua, Marcus said when I called, I have to admit, this is an unusual request. A 5-day lifestyle shoot in Las Vegas? That's not typically something we do for women my age? I finished. I was going to say for anyone, actually. Most of my shoots are single events or brief sessions. You're talking about comprehensive documentation of an entire luxury experience. That's exactly what I want. I want proof that I can live this way, that I belong in this world. I want photos that show exactly who I am when I'm not hiding behind other people's expectations. And cost is truly no object. I thought about the money sitting in my conservative investment accounts, earning minimal returns while I lived like I was poor. I thought about all the years I denied myself experiences because they seemed too extravagant, too selfish, too much. Cost is no object, I confirmed. Tuesday morning, I stood in my bedroom at 5 a.m., packing clothes I'd never worn because I'd never had anywhere special enough to wear them. The black cocktail dress I'd bought for Rebecca's wedding but decided was too dramatic for a mother of the bride. The silk scarves I'd collected over the years but never worn because they seemed too fancy for my everyday life. The jewelry my mother had left me that I'd kept in a safety deposit box because I didn't want to seem like I was showing off. For 76 years, I'd been saving my best things for special occasions that never came. I'd been waiting for someone else to decide I was worth celebrating. I was done waiting. As I zipped up my new suitcase, also a recent purchase, because my old one looked like it belonged to someone who apologized for traveling, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. I looked different somehow. Not younger, exactly, but more substantial. Like a woman who took up space in the world unapologetically. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Hope you're having a restful week, Mom. The weather here is perfect. The house is even more amazing than we imagined." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. "Glad you're enjoying yourselves. I'm having quite an adventure of my own." It wasn't exactly a lie. I was about to have the adventure of my lifetime. Another text, this one from Jack. "Helen told me about your plan. I think you're magnificent. Give them something to really talk about." I smiled as I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door. I wasn't just going to give them something to talk about. I was going to give them something to remember for the rest of their lives. The first-class cabin of the airplane was a revelation that made me question every economical choice I'd made in my 76 years. The seat was larger than my recliner at home. The flight attendant offered me champagne before takeoff, and the entire experience felt like stepping into a different world. "Is this your first time flying first class?" asked Sarah, the elegant flight attendant who seemed genuinely interested in making my flight perfect. "First time flying first class anywhere," I admitted. "Well, you're going to love it. Please let me know if there's anything at all I can do to make your flight more comfortable." As the plane lifted off from Phoenix, I looked down at the city where Rebecca was probably posting photos on social media, sharing highlights from their amazing family vacation, while deliberately excluding any mention of the family member they'd left behind. In 3 hours, I'd be in the same city, living an adventure that would put their group vacation to shame. Marcus was waiting for me at the airport, exactly as we'd arranged. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with a kind of effortless style that suggested he spent a lot of time around wealthy clients. When he spotted me coming down the jet bridge in my new travel outfit, his face lit up with professional appreciation. "Mrs. Joshua?"
I'm Marcus Kane.
"You look absolutely perfect. Please call me Mara." "And thank you. Mara it is." I have to say, when my assistant briefed me on this assignment, I was intrigued. A 76-year-old woman wants a luxury lifestyle shoot in Vegas? That's a first for me, and I've photographed everyone from tech billionaires to movie stars. I hope I don't disappoint. He grinned as he took my carry-on bag. "Trust me, you're not going to disappoint anyone. There's something about you, an elegance, a confidence. You're going to photograph beautifully." The ride to the Bellagio was like something out of a movie. Marcus had arranged for a Rolls-Royce, my first time in one, and as we glided through the streets of Las Vegas, he captured candid shots of me taking in the sights. The city was bigger and brighter than I'd imagined, all neon and energy and unapologetic excess. "So tell me," Marcus said as he adjusted his camera settings, "what's the real story here? This doesn't feel like a typical vacation shoot." I considered how much to reveal. "Let's just say I'm discovering who I am when I stop limiting myself to other people's expectations." "I love that. Can you tell me more?" "For most of my life, I've been a woman who said yes to everything, who put everyone else's needs first, who made herself small so others could feel bigger. This week, I'm finding out what happens when I take up the space I deserve." Marcus lowered his camera and looked at me with genuine interest. "That's a hell of a story, and I'm honored to document it." The penthouse suite at the Bellagio exceeded every fantasy I'd ever had about luxury living. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Strip. The living room was larger than my entire ground floor, and the bathroom featured a marble bathtub that could have accommodated a small pool party. Marcus documented my genuine amazement as I explored each stunning detail, capturing my face as I discovered amenities I'd only imagined. A fully stocked bar, fresh flowers that were replaced daily, a personal concierge who appeared within minutes of my arrival. "Mrs. Joshua, The concierge said with a kind of deference I'd never experienced, "Welcome to the Bellagio. I'm James, and I'll be taking care of anything you need during your stay. Would you like me to arrange dinner reservations, show tickets, transportation?" "All of the above," I said, and my voice carried a confidence that surprised me. "Excellent. I have some recommendations that I think you'll find perfect." As James left to make arrangements, I stood on my private balcony looking out at the city sprawling below me. Somewhere out there, Rebecca and David's family were probably settling into their vacation rental, excited about their week of family bonding. They had no idea that the woman they dismissed as too inconvenient to include was living better than any of them had ever lived. "You look like you belong here," Marcus said, capturing me silhouetted against the city lights. "I'm starting to think I do." That afternoon, we embarked on what Marcus called a lifestyle montage. Our first stop was the Forum Shops, where a personal stylist named Victoria helped me select an entirely new wardrobe that reflected the sophisticated woman I was becoming. "You have excellent bone structure," Victoria said as she held up a flowing silk dress in deep burgundy. "And your silver hair is absolutely stunning. We're going to emphasize your natural elegance." I tried on outfit after outfit, each one more beautiful than the last. Cashmere that felt like luxury against my skin, silk that moved like water, colors that made my complexion glow. For the first time in my adult life, I was dressing to be noticed rather than to blend in. "That's it," Marcus said when I emerged from the dressing room in a stunning black evening gown. "That's your signature look right there." I turned to examine myself in the three-way mirror and gasped. The woman looking back at me was elegant, confident, radiant. She looked like someone important, someone worth celebrating, someone who commanded attention and respect. She looked like someone Rebecca would be proud to call her mother, if Rebecca had bothered to get to know her. "We'll take everything," I told Victoria, and her smile could have powered the entire strip. From shopping, we went to the spa at the Bellagio, where I was treated like visiting royalty. The masseuse, a serene woman named Linda, worked out tension I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. "You hold a lot of stress in your shoulders," she observed as she worked. "Have you been carrying heavy burdens for a long time?" 76 years worth," I murmured into the massage table. "Well, we're going to help you let all of that go today." And somehow, miraculously, she did. By the time I emerged from the spa 3 hours later, I felt like a completely different person. My hair had been styled by a master artist, my makeup applied by someone who specialized in mature beauty, and my nails painted in what the technician called confidence red. "You look like a movie star," Marcus said as he captured me sipping champagne in the spa's relaxation lounge. "I feel like one." That evening, I dined alone at Joel Robuchon, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. 6 months ago, the idea of eating alone at a fancy restaurant would have mortified me. Tonight, there was nothing sad or pathetic about the experience. I was a sophisticated woman enjoying excellent food and service, and every staff member treated me with a kind of deference usually reserved for celebrities. Marcus documented it all, me studying the wine menu with the sommelier, laughing with my charming waiter, savoring each course of the tasting menu like I was born to this lifestyle. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said as we waited for dessert. "Of course. This transformation, it's not just about the clothes and the hotel, is it? There's something deeper happening here." I considered his question while taking a sip of the extraordinary wine the sommelier had selected. "I'm 76 years old, and I've never lived like this. I've never been treated like this. I've spent my entire life putting everyone else first, making myself smaller so they could feel bigger. And for what? So they could exclude me from their family vacation and lie to my face about it." "Someone excluded you from a family vacation?" "My daughter. She told me there wasn't room for me on their Las Vegas trip because the rental house could only accommodate 15 people. I gestured around the opulent restaurant. The house can accommodate 25 people. Marcus let out a low whistle. That's brutal. It was a wake-up call. I realized I've been living like I don't deserve nice things, like I'm not worth including, like my role in life is to serve other people's convenience. But you know what? I do deserve nice things. I am worth including. And I'm done apologizing for existing. Good for you. And I have to say, you're handling this with incredible grace. A lot of people would have gone straight to confrontation. Confrontation is what they'd expect from the old me. Dramatic, emotional, easy to dismiss. This version of me is much more powerful. After dinner, we strolled through the Bellagio's famous conservatory, where Marcus captured me among the gorgeous floral displays like some kind of sophisticated fairy godmother. Then we went to the fountains, where I watched the water dance to music with the kind of wonder I hadn't felt in decades. These are some of the best photos I've ever taken, Marcus told me as we headed back to the hotel. You're absolutely radiant. Back in my suite, I finally allowed myself to check my phone. There were several messages from Rebecca, all variations of having such a great time, and wish you were here, along with photos of her and Sophie at various Las Vegas attractions. Looking at the photos, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Part of me was still hurt by the exclusion, still angry about the lies. But another part of me felt almost grateful. If Rebecca hadn't excluded me, I never would have discovered this version of myself. I texted back. Looks wonderful. I'm having quite an adventure myself. Enjoy every moment. It was the truth, if not the whole truth. Another text came in, this one from Helen. How's life as a woman of mystery? I typed back. Magnificent. I'm becoming the person I was always meant to be.
Good.
Don't let anyone convince you to go back to hiding. I spent the evening going through my new clothes, planning outfits for the rest of my stay. For the first time in my adult life, I was dressing to be seen rather than to disappear. I was choosing colors and styles that made me feel powerful rather than invisible. As I prepared for bed in silk pajamas that cost more than my usual monthly clothing budget, I caught sight of myself in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at me was elegant, confident, and completely at ease in this luxury environment. She looked like she belonged here. More importantly, she looked like she belonged anywhere she chose to be. My second day in Las Vegas dawned bright with possibility. I woke up in the most comfortable bed I'd ever experienced, ordered room service that would have fed my entire book club, and spent an hour on my private balcony planning my day like the sophisticated woman I was becoming. Marcus arrived at 10 a.m. with his usual enthusiasm and a gleam in his eye that suggested he'd been thinking about our conversation the night before. I've been researching your daughter's family, he said as he set up his equipment. They're all over social media, posting from every tourist spot in Vegas. The Bellagio Conservatory, the Forum Shops, various restaurants. I felt a flutter of something that might have been anxiety. Are you suggesting we follow them? I'm suggesting you go to the places you want to go. If your family happens to be at those same places, well, that's just an interesting coincidence, isn't it? It was a dangerous idea, but also incredibly tempting. What if they see me? What if they do? You're not doing anything wrong. You're a sophisticated woman living her best life in Las Vegas. If they happen to witness that. He shrugged eloquently. I thought about Rebecca's social media posts, all the photos of her family having fun in the same city, where she told me I wasn't welcome. Maybe it was time she saw exactly what she'd excluded from her family celebration. Where would you suggest we start? Marcus grinned. The Forum Shops. According to Instagram, they were there yesterday afternoon. Prime time for a sophisticated shopping expedition, don't you think? I was wearing one of my new outfits, a stunning cream-colored suit with gold accessories that made me look like old Hollywood royalty. My hair was styled perfectly, my makeup flawless, and I carried myself with the kind of confidence that money can't buy but comfort with yourself can develop. The forum shops were as opulent as I'd expected, but this time I wasn't intimidated by the luxury. I belonged here as much as anyone else, and I moved through the space like I owned it. Marcus captured me browsing at high-end boutiques, examining jewelry that cost more than most people's cars, selecting gifts with the casual air of someone accustomed to luxury shopping. We were near the central fountain when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Oh my God, that woman looks just like... I turned slowly, and there was Emma, David's sister, staring at me with her mouth hanging open. Behind her stood David's brother Tom and his wife Jennifer, all three of them looking like they'd seen a ghost. Mara? Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Hello, Emma, I said calmly, smoothing down my designer jacket. How lovely to see you. Marcus, bless him, kept photographing as if nothing unusual was happening. Click, click, click went his camera, capturing my serene expression and their stunned faces. But, what are you? How are you? Emma stammered. I'm in Las Vegas, I said with a gracious smile. Same as you, it appears. Marcus, could you get a few shots of me by the fountain? The lighting there is exquisite. Absolutely, Marcus said smoothly. The contrast between the water and your outfit is perfect. I glided past the shocked trio as if they were part of the scenery, my head held high, my confidence radiating like expensive perfume. Behind me, I could hear frantic whispering, but I didn't turn around. That was masterful, Marcus murmured as he repositioned me near the fountain. You handled that like a professional. I've had 76 years to develop dignity, I said softly. We spent another hour at the forum shops, with Marcus capturing increasingly elaborate shots. I felt like a movie star, posing among the luxury displays in my designer clothes, the professional lighting making me glow with an inner radiance I'd forgotten I possessed. My phone started buzzing around noon. First a text from David. Hey Mara, Emma thought she saw you at the forum shops? That's crazy, right? Hope you're having a relaxing week at home. I showed the message to Marcus, who grinned like Christmas morning. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. Yet. More texts followed. Rebecca, Mom, the weirdest thing happened. David's family swears they saw you shopping in Vegas. I told them that was impossible since you're house-sitting for us. Everything okay at home? I tucked the phone away without responding. Let them wonder. Let them question what they thought they knew about reliable, predictable Mara. We continued with our planned itinerary, completely ignoring the family crisis my appearance was apparently causing. Lunch at a rooftop restaurant with panoramic views of the Strip, where Marcus captured me looking elegant and worldly as I sipped champagne and enjoyed cuisine that cost more per bite than I used to spend on entire meals. You know, Marcus said as he reviewed the photos on his camera, you're not just modeling for these shots. You're actually living this lifestyle. There's a difference, and it shows in every image. What's the difference? Most people I photograph are performing wealth and sophistication. You're simply being wealthy and sophisticated. It's completely natural to you. The afternoon brought a spa appointment at the Ritz-Carlton, where I was pampered like visiting royalty. Facial treatments that promised to reverse time, massages that melted away decades of tension, hairstyling that made me look like I belonged on magazine covers. My phone continued buzzing throughout the treatments, more confused texts from David's family, increasingly frantic messages from Rebecca. I ignored them all. The new Mara wasn't available to manage other people's confusion at her inconvenient existence. That evening, I had dinner reservations at Le Cirque, another restaurant that required months of advance booking and charged prices that would make most people faint. I wore my black evening gown with my mother's diamond jewelry, and when I walked into the restaurant, conversation actually stopped. Mrs. Joshua, the maitre d' said with the kind of deference usually reserved for celebrities, Your table is ready. I was seated at the best table in the house, with perfect views of the strip and the kind of service that made me feel like the most important person in the room. Marcus documented every moment. My confidence as I ordered wine that cost more than most people's monthly rent, my elegant posture as I savored each course, my genuine joy at being treated with such respect and attention. I have to ask, Marcus said over dessert, where has this woman been hiding all these years? In Phoenix, I said simply, making casseroles and babysitting and pretending that was enough. And now, I looked around the restaurant, at the crystal chandeliers and the impeccable service and the other diners who clearly belonged in this rarefied world. 6 months ago, I would have felt intimidated, out of place, like an imposter who didn't deserve to be here. Tonight, I felt like I'd finally come home. Now I'm just getting started, I said. Around 9 o'clock, as we were finishing our wine, I spotted a familiar figure being seated across the restaurant. David's mother Martha, along with her husband Robert and their son Mark with his wife, were being shown to a prominent table. Well, Marcus murmured, following my gaze. The plot thickens. Martha noticed me almost immediately. I watched her do a double take, then lean across the table to whisper urgently to her husband. Within moments, all 4 of them were staring in my direction with expressions ranging from confusion to grudging admiration. I smiled serenely and raised my wine glass in their direction, as if toasting old friends at a chance encounter. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Marcus asked, capturing my victorious expression. "Immensely," I admitted. For years, Martha has made little comments about my simple lifestyle and my modest circumstances. I wonder what she's thinking now. 10 minutes later, Mark approached our table, his expression a mixture of bewilderment and respect. "Mara, wow. You look incredible."
Thank you, Mark.
"How are you enjoying your family vacation?" "It's great, thanks." "Listen, I wanted to apologize for earlier at the Forum Shops. We were just surprised to see you and—" "No need to apologize," I said graciously. "I understand completely. You weren't expecting to see me because I wasn't invited to your family vacation." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "About that, I think there might have been some miscommunication. Just different priorities. Please give my regards to your family." It was a polite dismissal, and Mark recognized it as such. He nodded awkwardly and returned to his table, where I could see him having an animated conversation with the others. "That was beautifully handled," Marcus said. "You're developing quite a talent for this." "I'm discovering that I've always had the talent. I just never had the confidence to use it." After dinner, we took a moonlit stroll through the Bellagio's gardens, where Marcus captured me looking like a sophisticated fairy godmother among the illuminated flowers. The evening was perfect, warm but not hot, clear skies full of stars, the kind of night that made you feel like anything was possible. Back in my suite, I finally allowed myself to read the messages that had been accumulating all day. Rebecca had called 4 times and sent a dozen increasingly frantic texts. "Mom, seriously, are you in Vegas? David's family is really insisting they saw you. This is so weird. Can you please call me? I'm starting to worry. Emma, please respond. Everyone is talking about this woman who looks exactly like you, but is obviously wealthy and glamorous, and that can't be you because you're house-sitting, right?" I poured myself a glass of champagne and composed my response carefully. "Hello, dear. Sorry for the delayed response. I've been quite busy today. Yes, I'm in Las Vegas. Having a wonderful time. Hope you're enjoying your family vacation. Love you."
Send.
I turned off my phone and stood on my balcony, looking out at the city that had already transformed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new discoveries about who I could be when I stopped limiting myself to other people's expectations. But tonight, I was simply Mara Joshua, a sophisticated woman of means enjoying a beautiful evening in a beautiful city, finally living the life she deserved. And it felt magnificent. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Las Vegas time, which meant Rebecca was calling at 7 a.m. Phoenix time, early for her, which told me exactly how rattled she was by my revelation. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. On the fourth call, I finally answered. "Good morning, Rebecca." "Mom." Her voice was tight, with barely controlled panic. What the hell is going on? I'd never heard my daughter use that tone with me before, but instead of making me apologetic, it made me strangely calm. "Language, dear." "Language? Language?" "Mom, you completely blindsided me last night. You're in Las Vegas? How is that even possible? Why didn't you tell me?" I sipped my room service coffee and watched the sunrise paint the strip in shades of gold. "Because you told me there wasn't room for me on your family vacation, remember? So I decided to have my own vacation. But why Las Vegas? Of all places. Why not Las Vegas? It's a beautiful city with excellent hotels and restaurants. Perfect for the kind of sophisticated vacation I wanted to take." "Sophisticated vacation?" Rebecca's voice cracked slightly. "Mom, who are you right now?" "I'm the same person I've always been, honey. I'm just not hiding anymore." There was a long pause. "We need to talk. Face to face. Can you come to our villa?"
No. No.
"No, I cannot come to your villa. You made it very clear that I wasn't welcome there. If you want to see me, you can come to my hotel." "What hotel are you staying at?" "The Bellagio."
Pas tout de suite.
Another silence, longer this time. "The penthouse suite?" "Mom, how can you possibly afford?" "I can afford quite a lot of things, Rebecca. I just never chose to spend money on myself before." "This is insane. You're acting like a completely different person." "Maybe I am," I said. "Maybe this is who I was always supposed to be, and I just forgot for a while." Marcus arrived shortly after I hung up, bringing his usual energy and a new perspective on my situation. "How are you feeling about seeing your daughter today?" he asked as he set up his equipment. "Nervous. Excited. Determined." I considered the question more carefully. "Ready, I think." "What's your goal for the meeting?" "To show her who I really am. To let her see the woman she chose to exclude from her family celebration. And to find out if she's capable of treating that woman with respect." We spent the morning at the spa again, where I was pampered like visiting royalty. Facial treatments, massage therapy, hairstyling that made me look like I belonged on magazine covers. Marcus documented the entire transformation, capturing my evolution from ordinary grandmother to sophisticated woman of leisure. "You realize," he said as we reviewed the morning's photos, "you're not just playing a role anymore. This is actually who you are." He was right. The woman in the photographs wasn't pretending to be elegant and confident. She simply was elegant and confident. The luxury surroundings didn't intimidate her. They complemented her. She belonged in this world because she'd finally given herself permission to belong anywhere. Around noon, Rebecca called to say she was in the Bellagio lobby. I chose my outfit carefully for our meeting. A silk blouse in deep purple that made my silver hair look like expensive platinum, paired with elegant black slacks and the pearl necklace that had been my mother's. Professional but not intimidating, sophisticated but still approachable. I wanted Rebecca to see exactly what she'd excluded from her family vacation. The lobby of the Bellagio was crowded with tourists, but I spotted Rebecca immediately. She was standing near the registration desk, looking around with an expression I'd never seen before, something between awe and bewilderment. Next to her stood David, who appeared deeply uncomfortable, and Sophie, who was clutching a stuffed animal and looking confused by the obvious tension. When Rebecca saw me approaching, her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and something that looked almost like fear. "Mom," she said uncertainly. You're... Hello, Rebecca. David. Sophie, sweetheart. I bent down to hug my granddaughter, who immediately launched into excited chatter about their vacation activities. "Grandma Mara, this place is like a fairy tale. Are you really staying here?" "I am indeed, sweetheart. Can we see your room? Please." I looked at Rebecca, who was still staring at me like I was a stranger. "Would you like to see my suite?" Rebecca nodded mutely, and we made our way to the elevators. The ride to the penthouse level was silent except for Sophie's excited commentary about the hotel's opulence. When I opened the door to my suite, Sophie gasped audibly. "Grandma, it's like a palace." It really was. The living room was larger than Rebecca's entire first apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the Strip. Fresh flowers, replaced daily, filled crystal vases, and the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, making everything glow like a movie set. "My God," David breathed, looking around with obvious amazement. "Mara, this must cost more than you spend on rent." I finished calmly. "Yes, it does." Rebecca was moving through the space like someone in a dream, touching surfaces and examining details with the kind of attention she usually reserved for checking Sophie's homework. "Mom," she said finally, turning to face me, "I don't understand any of this. Where did this come from? The clothes, the hotel, the confidence." "It came from finally deciding I deserved it. But you never, you've never done anything like this before." "No, I haven't. I've been saving my money and my dreams for other people for 76 years. Last week, I decided it was time to spend them on myself." Sophie had discovered the balcony and was pressed against the glass, marveling at the view. David was examining the furnishings with the eye of someone calculating costs. But Rebecca was focused entirely on me, studying my face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Mom, about the Las Vegas trip, about not inviting you." "You mean about lying to me?" I corrected gently. She flinched. "We didn't lie. We thought you'd be more comfortable staying home." "Rebecca, I found the rental agreement in David's office. The villa accommodates 25 people, not 15. David's face went pale. "Mara, I can explain." "No need to explain, David. I understand the situation perfectly. You didn't want me on your family vacation, so you created a story about limited space. It's quite simple." We didn't." Rebecca struggled for words. "Mom, you have to understand, David's family can be overwhelming. We thought you might not enjoy." "Did you ask me what I might enjoy?"
No.
"Did it occur to you that I might want to be included in my daughter's family celebration, regardless of whether David's relatives are overwhelming?" No, I guess it didn't." Sophie came running back from the balcony, her face flushed with excitement. "Grandma, can we order room service? I saw the menu, and they have chocolate cake." "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you'd like." As I called room service, ordering an elaborate afternoon tea that would have fed twice as many people, I watched Rebecca's expression carefully. She was beginning to understand that this wasn't a temporary transformation or a rebellious phase. This was who I actually was when I stopped limiting myself to her narrow expectations. "Mom," she said quietly while Sophie explored the bathroom, "I need to ask you something." "Yes. Are you angry with me?" I considered the question while arranging myself gracefully on the silk sofa. I was angry, yes. But now I'm more disappointed. Disappointed? "Rebecca, I've been your mother for 34 years. I've supported you through everything: your father's abandonment, financial struggles when you were growing up, your wedding, Sophie's birth, career challenges. I've been present for every important moment of your life." She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. But when it came time for you to make family memories in Las Vegas, I wasn't even considered. I wasn't worth a conversation about whether I might like to be included. I was just dismissed.
Mom, I'm sorry. I really am.
We made a mistake. Yes, you did. But the mistake wasn't about logistics or room limitations. The mistake was about how you see me. You see me as a convenience, not as a person with her own life and desires. Room service arrived with a spread that made Sophie's eyes widen with delight. As we sat around the elegant table, sharing exquisite pastries and perfect tea, I watched my family take in their surroundings with new awareness. "Grandma," Sophie said around a bite of chocolate eclair, "are you rich?" Rebecca and David both froze, clearly wondering the same thing.
I'm comfortable, sweetheart.
I've been saving money for a long time, and I finally decided to spend some of it on myself. "How much money?" David asked, then immediately looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, that's none of my business." "You're right, it's not. But since you're family, I'll tell you that your grandmother is financially independent and has been for quite some time." The implications of this statement hung in the air. Rebecca was clearly doing mental calculations, realizing that her assumptions about my limitations had been completely wrong. "Mom," she said slowly, "when you said you wanted to save the inheritance for emergencies, I meant emergencies that never came. What I didn't realize until recently is that living a half-life isn't virtuous. It's wasteful." We finished our tea in relative silence, with Sophie providing the only conversation as she marveled over the hotel's amenities. When they prepared to leave, Rebecca lingered at the door. "Mom, can we talk more tomorrow? Just the two of us." "If you'd like." "I would. I think I owe you more than just an apology." After they left, I stood on my balcony for a long time, watching the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the strip. The confrontation had gone better than I'd expected. Rebecca was beginning to understand what she'd done wrong, which was more progress than I'd dared hope for. But understanding and changing were two very different things. The real test would come when we returned to Phoenix, when the novelty of this transformation wore off, when the patterns of decades reasserted themselves. Marcus joined me for dinner that evening at another spectacular restaurant, where we celebrated the day's success with champagne and cuisine that was art on a plate. "How do you think it went?" he asked. "Better than expected. Rebecca is starting to see me as a person rather than just a convenient mother. Whether she can sustain that perspective remains to be seen. And if she can't..." I thought about the woman I'd become over the past few days, confident, sophisticated, unafraid to take up space in the world. That woman didn't need anyone's approval to exist. "Then I'll be disappointed, but I'll still be magnificent," I said. Marcus raised his glass. "To being magnificent, regardless of other people's capacity to recognize it." "To being magnificent," I agreed. The next morning brought another early call from Rebecca, but this time her voice carried a different quality, less panic, more uncertainty. "Mom, could we have lunch today? Just the two of us? I have some things I want to say, and I'd like to say them properly." I was sitting on my balcony in a silk robe that cost more than my usual monthly clothing budget, watching the city wake up below me while sipping coffee that was probably grown on some exclusive mountain in Jamaica. "All right," I said. "Where did you have in mind? Could we meet at your hotel? There's supposed to be an amazing restaurant there, and honestly, I'd like to experience a little bit of how you've been living this week." It was a small acknowledgement, but I recognized it as significant. Rebecca was asking to enter my world instead of expecting me to accommodate hers. "I'll make a reservation for 1 o'clock. After I hung up, Marcus arrived with his usual enthusiasm and a new perspective on my situation. "Final day of shooting," he said as he set up his equipment. "How does it feel to be finishing your transformation?" "Like I'm just getting started," I said, which surprised me because I realized it was true. We spent the morning capturing what Marcus called victory shots, images of me looking confident and radiant in various locations around the hotel. Me in the conservatory, elegant among the seasonal flowers. Me by the fountains, sophisticated against the backdrop of dancing water. Me in the luxury shops, selecting gifts with the casual air of someone accustomed to the finer things. These photos are going to be incredible keepsakes, Marcus said as we reviewed the shots on his camera. But more than that, they're proof of what you're capable of when you stop limiting yourself. They're proof that I was always this person. I just forgot for a while. Rebecca arrived 10 minutes early for our lunch, which told me she was still nervous. She'd made an obvious effort with her appearance, wearing a dress I'd never seen before and makeup that suggested she'd spent considerable time on her preparation. "Mom, you look wonderful," she said as we were seated at a table overlooking the fountains. "Thank you. So do you. That's a lovely dress." "I bought it this morning," she admitted. "I wanted to look nice for our lunch." It was such a small thing, but it meant everything. Rebecca had never bothered to dress up for me before. She'd never considered that I might be worth making an effort for. We ordered lunch. I chose exactly what I wanted without checking prices. Rebecca selected something modest, but didn't comment on the expense of my choices. Progress, albeit small. "Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking since yesterday," she began once our salads had arrived. "About our relationship, about how I've been treating you, about what kind of daughter I've been." "And what conclusions have you reached?" "That I've been a terrible daughter," she said bluntly. "Not just recently, but for years. Maybe decades." I raised an eyebrow. "That's a strong word." "It's an accurate word. Mom, when's the last time I took you out to lunch? When's the last time I called just to see how you were doing? When's the last time I asked about your dreams or your goals or what you wanted out of life?" I asked you those same questions 2 days ago. And I couldn't answer them because I've never cared enough to ask. I've been so focused on my own life, my own problems, my own family, that I forgot you were a person with needs and desires outside of being my mother. Our entrees arrived, and we ate in thoughtful silence for a few minutes. I could see Rebecca gathering courage for whatever she wanted to say next. "The thing is," she continued finally, "I think I learned this behavior from you." "Excuse me?" "You taught me that your needs didn't matter. You taught me that you existed solely to serve our family. Every time you canceled your own plans to babysit, every time you said yes when you probably wanted to say no, every time you put us first without even considering yourself, you taught me that this was normal." I felt a flash of defensiveness, but I forced myself to consider her words. "Are you saying this is my fault?" "I'm saying we both created this dynamic. You taught me that you didn't have needs, and I chose to believe it because it was convenient. But I'm an adult now, Mom. I should have seen what was happening and done something about it. And what do you want to do about it now?" Rebecca reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, which she slid across the table to me. "I've been working on this all morning." I opened the envelope to find what appeared to be a handwritten contract. At the top, in Rebecca's neat script, it said, "New rules for our relationship." I read through the list, and with each item, I felt something tight in my chest begin to loosen. "I will call Mom at least once a week just to talk, not because I need something. I will ask about Mom's life, her interests, her dreams, and her goals. I will include Mom in family plans and ask for her input, not just inform her of decisions we've already made. I will respect Mom's right to say no without guilt-tripping or manipulation. I will acknowledge that Mom is a person with her own life, not just an extension of our family. I will show appreciation for Mom's help and support, not take it for granted. I will make an effort to contribute to Mom's happiness, not just expect her to contribute to ours. I will treat Mom as an equal in our relationship, not as a subordinate. I will never again exclude Mom from family events without including her in the decision-making process. I will support Mom's independence and personal growth, even when it makes me uncomfortable. At the bottom, she'd signed her name and left a space for mine. "What do you think?" she asked nervously. I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised and loved and sometimes enabled, and saw something I hadn't seen before: genuine remorse and a sincere desire to change. "I think it's a good start," I said, signing my name below hers. "Just a start. Rebecca, this list is wonderful, but the real test will be following through. It's easy to make promises when you're feeling guilty. It's harder to keep them when life gets busy and old patterns start to feel easier."
I know. But, Mom, I want to try.
This week, seeing you like this, seeing who you really are when you're not hiding behind being our convenient mother. I don't want to lose this version of you. You won't lose her, I assured her. But you're going to have to earn her trust back.
How?
By proving that you mean what you've written. By showing me that you see me as a person worth including, worth consulting, worth celebrating. By demonstrating that our relationship can be mutual instead of one-sided. We finished lunch on a lighter note, with Rebecca asking genuine questions about my vacation experiences, my plans for the future, and my thoughts on everything from the hotel service to the artwork in the restaurant. It felt like talking to an adult daughter instead of a demanding child, and I realized how much I'd missed having real conversations with her. "So, what happens now?" she asked as we prepared to leave. "Now I finish my vacation and return to Phoenix tomorrow. And you go home and figure out how to be the kind of daughter who deserves this version of me. And if I fail, if I slip back into old patterns, then you'll discover that the new Mara has boundaries and consequences," I said simply. "I won't disappear from your life, Rebecca, but I also won't accept being treated like a convenience again." She nodded solemnly. "I understand. And Mom, I'm proud of you. For standing up for yourself, for refusing to accept less than you deserve, for showing me what it looks like when a woman values herself properly." "Thank you. That means more than you know." That afternoon, Marcus and I had our final session together, documenting my last day in Las Vegas as a transformed woman. We visited the art galleries at the Bellagio, where I purchased a painting that spoke to my soul, an abstract piece in blues and silvers that captured the feeling of water dancing in sunlight. "That's going to look incredible in your home," Marcus said as the gallery wrapped my purchase. "Very sophisticated choice." "I'm redecorating everything when I get back," I said. "The beige walls, the safe furniture, the complete absence of personality. It all has to go."
Good.
Your home should reflect who you actually are, not who you thought you should be. We had dinner at one final spectacular restaurant, this one featuring a chef who was apparently famous for revolutionizing modern cuisine. The food was art on a plate, the wine was poetry in a glass, and I savored every moment of being treated like the sophisticated woman I'd discovered myself to be. "So," Marcus said over dessert, "what's your verdict? Was this revenge vacation successful?" I considered the question while taking a sip of dessert wine that probably cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month. I don't think it was revenge, actually. I think it was rescue. Rescue. I rescued myself from a life where I'd forgotten I mattered. I rescued my relationship with my daughter from a dynamic that was toxic for both of us. I rescued my future from being more of the same disappointing past. And what does that future look like? I smiled, thinking about the plans I'd been forming. Well, first I'm going to redecorate my house completely. All those beige walls and practical furniture are going away. I want color and style and beauty in my living space. What else? I'm going to start traveling regularly. Not just weekend trips to safe, affordable destinations, but real adventures. I want to see Paris, Rome, maybe take an African safari. Ambitious. I like it. I'm also going to start dating. Marcus nearly choked on his wine. Really? Why not? I'm an attractive, financially independent woman with a lot to offer. Just because my first marriage didn't work out doesn't mean I should spend the rest of my life alone. I think Phoenix is going to be very surprised by the new Mara Joshua. I certainly hope so. As we finished dinner, Marcus presented me with a leather portfolio containing every photograph he'd taken during our time together. Professional prints, beautifully mounted, creating a visual narrative of my transformation from invisible grandmother to confident, glamorous woman. "These are incredible," I said, flipping through them. "I look like a completely different person." "You are a completely different person. Or rather, you're the person you always were underneath all that self-sacrifice and people-pleasing." The final photo in the portfolio was from that morning, me standing on my balcony overlooking the strip, wearing my silk robe, coffee cup in hand, looking out at the world like I owned it. I did own it, I realized. Or at least, I own my place in it. "Marcus, this has been the most transformative week of my life. Thank you for helping me document it. Thank you for letting me witness it. And Mara, don't let anyone convince you to go back to being invisible. The world needs more women like the one you've become." That night, I packed my new clothes and my new confidence, preparing to return to Phoenix as a fundamentally different person than the one who had left. I wasn't sure how my neighbors would react to the sophisticated woman I'd become, or whether my quiet suburban life could accommodate the elegant lifestyle I discovered. But I was excited to find out. My phone buzzed with a text from Helen. "Can't wait to hear about your adventure. Lunch tomorrow to debrief." I typed back, "Absolutely. I have so much to tell you." Another text, this one from Jack. "Rebecca called me today. Says her mother has become intimidatingly sophisticated, and she's not sure how to handle it. Good work." I smiled as I responded, "Just getting started." As I prepared for bed in my silk pajamas, I stood one last time on the balcony of my penthouse suite, looking out at the city that had transformed me. Tomorrow I would return to my regular life, but I would never again be the woman who accepted exclusion without consequence. I was Mara Joshua, woman of substance, style, and unshakable self-worth. And I was done apologizing for existing. The flight back to Phoenix felt different from any trip I'd ever taken. Instead of the usual anxiety about returning to responsibilities, I felt calm and purposeful. I was returning home not as someone escaping back to reality, but as someone bringing an improved version of reality with her. Helen had offered to pick me up from the airport, and I'd accepted gladly. She was one of the few people who had seen this transformation coming, and I was curious about her reaction to the finished product. I spotted her waiting at baggage claim before she spotted me, and I watched her face as she scanned the crowd. When her eyes finally landed on me, her reaction was everything I could have hoped for. "My God, Mara," she breathed as I approached. "What happened to you?" "I found myself," I said, embracing her with more confidence than I'd shown in years. "You certainly did. You look powerful, sophisticated, like you could buy and sell this entire airport." "I probably could," I said with a smile that felt natural and unforced. As Helen loaded my new designer luggage into her car, she kept stealing glances at me like she couldn't quite process the transformation. "So tell me everything," she said as we pulled out of the airport. "Did you make them squirm? Please tell me you made them squirm." I told her about the week. The luxury hotel, the professional photographer, the strategic encounters with David's family, the gradual realization among Rebecca's in-laws that they'd underestimated me completely. "And Rebecca?" Helen asked. "How did she take your transformation?" "Better than I expected. She's beginning to understand what she did wrong, which is progress. Whether she can sustain that understanding remains to be seen." "What do you mean?" I told her about the contract Rebecca had written, about her promises to change the dynamic between us, about her apparent genuine remorse for how she'd been treating me. "That's more self-awareness than I expected from her," Helen admitted. "But you're right to be cautious. It's easy to promise change when you're feeling guilty. When we pulled into my driveway, I looked at my house with completely new eyes. It was a nice house, well-maintained and comfortable, but it looked like the home of someone who'd forgotten she had any personality. Beige everything, conservative landscaping, nothing that would make anyone stop and think about the interesting person who might live there. "You're going to redecorate, aren't you?" Helen said, following my gaze. "Completely. This house is going to reflect the woman I've become, not the woman I used to be. I can't wait to see it. And Mara, I'm proud of you. For standing up for yourself, for refusing to accept less than you deserve, for finally letting the world see who you really are." Inside, the house felt smaller than I remembered, and incredibly bland. The beige walls, the safe furniture choices, the complete absence of anything that might be considered bold or risky, it all had to go. But first, I had phone calls to make. I called my financial advisor, Harold, first, the conservative man who'd been managing my mother's inheritance with excessive caution for a decade. "Harold, it's Mara Joshua. I need to schedule a meeting to discuss some major changes to my investment strategy." "Changes?" "Mara, your current approach is very sound. Conservative, stable returns, minimal risk." "I want some risk," I interrupted. "I want growth investments, international funds, maybe some individual stocks. I'm 76 years old, and I've been playing it safe my entire life. I want to see what happens when I bet on myself." There was a long pause. "That's quite a departure from your usual approach." "I'm quite a departure from my usual self. Can you meet with me this week?" "Of course. But Mara, I feel obligated to warn you about the volatility of—" "Harold, I've spent 10 years watching my money grow at 2% annually while inflation ate away at my purchasing power. I think it's time to try a different approach." Next, I called the most exclusive interior design firm in Phoenix. Patricia Whitmore was known for creating sophisticated spaces for the city's elite, and her services came with a price tag that would have terrified the old me. "Mrs. Joshua," Patricia said when I explained what I wanted, "a complete home transformation is quite an undertaking. My fees for a project of this scope are not a concern," I finished. "When can you start?" "I usually have a waiting list, but if you're willing to pay a premium for expedited service." "I am." I also scheduled appointments for the coming weeks that would have seemed impossible a month ago. A personal stylist to update my entire wardrobe. A consultation with a high-end salon about a complete image makeover. Even a meeting with a personal trainer who specialized in fitness programs for active seniors. By the time I finished making calls, I had appointments scheduled that would transform every aspect of my life. I was creating a complete makeover that would ensure the sophisticated woman I discovered in Las Vegas could thrive in Phoenix. That evening, Rebecca called. "Mom, you're home. How was your flight?" "Fine, thank you." "How was the rest of your vacation?" "Different. Better, actually. We spent a lot of time talking about family dynamics and how we want to do things differently going forward." "That sounds promising." "Mom, I was wondering, could I come over tomorrow? I'd like to see you, and I have something I want to give you." "Of course." "But Rebecca, I should warn you, I'm in the middle of some major life changes. The house is going to be chaos for the next few weeks." "What kind of changes?" "The kind that reflect who I really am instead of who I thought I should be." There was a pause. "I can't wait to see it." After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine from the expensive bottle I'd brought back from Las Vegas and sat in my living room, looking around at all the things that would soon be gone. The beige walls, the safe furniture, the complete absence of personality. It felt like saying goodbye to a version of myself that I'd outgrown. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How's life as the new Mara?" I typed back. "Transformative. Thank you for helping me document the discovery. Thank you for letting me witness it. Those photos are going to remind you forever of what you're capable of."
He was right.
Every time I looked at those pictures, I saw a woman of substance, style, and unshakable confidence. A woman who belonged in expensive restaurants and luxury hotels. A woman who commanded attention and respect. A woman I was proud to be. I spent the evening going through my old wardrobe, pulling out clothes that belonged to the previous version of myself. Shapeless sweaters, practical shoes, anything in beige or gray that was designed to help me blend into the background. It all went into donation bags. If I was going to be the sophisticated woman I discovered in Las Vegas, I needed a wardrobe that reflected that identity. As I worked, I thought about Rebecca's promise to change, about the contract she'd written, about the possibility that our relationship might finally evolve into something healthy and mutual. But I also thought about the possibility that she might slip back into old patterns when the novelty wore off and life returned to normal. And I realized I was prepared for either outcome. If Rebecca followed through on her promises, we would build something beautiful together. If she didn't, I would still be the confident, self-possessed woman I'd become. My happiness was no longer dependent on her approval or attention. That was perhaps the most liberating realization of all. I was enough all by myself. Everything else was just bonus. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed but felt like I was inhabiting someone else's life. Everything looked the same: the beige bedroom walls, the practical furniture, the conservative artwork, but I was fundamentally different. It was like trying to fit a butterfly back into a cocoon. I made coffee with the expensive beans I'd brought back from Las Vegas and sat in my kitchen, making lists of everything that needed to change. The redecorating would be the most visible transformation, but there were deeper changes required too. Social connections I'd let wither because Rebecca might need something. Interests I'd abandoned because they seemed too selfish. Dreams I'd deferred because they didn't serve anyone else's convenience. It was time to reclaim all of it. Around 10 a.m., Rebecca arrived with Sophie in tow. My granddaughter burst through the door with her usual energy, but Rebecca moved more carefully, like she was approaching a stranger's house instead of her childhood home. "Good morning," I said, bending down to hug Sophie. "How are you feeling after your big vacation?" "Tired," Sophie said honestly. "It was fun, but there were a lot of people, and everyone was always talking about grown-up things." "That sounds exhausting." Rebecca watched this exchange with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Mom, you look different here. In your own house, I mean." "Different how?" "Like you don't quite fit anymore. Like you've outgrown it." She was more perceptive than I'd given her credit for. "I suppose I have outgrown it. This house reflects the woman I used to be, not the woman I am now." "What are you going to do about it?" I told her about my plans: the complete redecorating, the wardrobe overhaul, the lifestyle changes I was implementing. As I spoke, I watched Rebecca's expression shift from confusion to something that might have been awe. "Mom, this is incredible. You're really doing this, changing everything. I'm becoming who I was always meant to be. I just got distracted for a few decades." Sophie had wandered into the living room and was examining my photo albums, which I'd left out on the coffee table. "Grandma, who is this beautiful lady?" she asked, holding up one of Marcus's photographs. Rebecca and I both moved to look. It was one of my favorites. Me in my black evening gown at Le Cirque, looking elegant and confident and completely at ease in that rarefied environment. "That's me, sweetheart," I said. Sophie's eyes widened. "Really? You look like a movie star." "Thank you. I felt like one." Rebecca studied the photo for a long moment. "Mom, you look like you belong in that world. Like you were born to it." Maybe I was. I just never gave myself permission to find out. We spent the morning going through the photo portfolio Marcus had given me, with Rebecca and Sophie marveling over each image. The transformation was dramatic even to me, from the conservative grandmother in the early shots to the sophisticated woman of the world in the later ones. "This is my favorite," Sophie said, pointing to a photo of me by the Bellagio fountains, laughing with genuine joy as the water danced behind me. You look so happy. I was happy. Happier than I'd been in years. Why? Rebecca asked quietly. Because for the first time in decades, I was living for myself. I wasn't trying to be convenient or unobtrusive or accommodating. I was just being me, and it felt magnificent. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a delivery man with an enormous bouquet of flowers, roses, lilies, and orchids arranged with the kind of artistry that spoke of serious expense. Mara Joshua, he asked. Yes.
These are for you.
The card was from Charles Whitman, the retired professor I'd met at the art gallery opening I'd attended the week before I left for Las Vegas. We'd had coffee together once, and I'd mentioned my upcoming trip. Welcome home, the card read. I hope your adventure was everything you dreamed it would be. Would you like to have dinner this Friday to tell me about it? Charles. Rebecca read the card over my shoulder. Who's Charles? A gentleman I met recently. He's intelligent, well-traveled, and seems quite interested in getting to know me better. You're dating? Rebecca's voice carried a note of shock. I'm considering it. Is that surprising? Yes. I mean, you haven't dated anyone since Dad left. That was 34 years ago, Rebecca. I think it's time, don't you? Sophie was examining the flowers with the kind of careful attention she usually reserved for interesting insects. They're beautiful, Grandma. He must really like you. I think he might. Over lunch, a simple meal that felt strange after a week of gourmet dining, Rebecca brought up the topic I'd been expecting. Mom, about David's family, about what happened in Vegas. What about it? They're all talking about you. About how sophisticated you looked, how confident you seemed, how you clearly had money they never knew about. And Martha feels terrible about that comment she made on Facebook, about not wanting outsiders on the vacation. I raised an eyebrow. She feels terrible because she got caught being cruel, or because she realizes she was wrong? I think both. And what about David? How does he feel about discovering that his mother-in-law isn't the simple retiree he thought she was? Rebecca shifted uncomfortably. He's embarrassed. About the loan he took against your house. About assuming you wouldn't find out. About the whole deception. This was news to me. What loan? Rebecca's face went pale. Oh, God. You don't know about the loan. What loan, Rebecca? She took a deep breath and told me about David's business venture, about the loan he'd secured using my house as collateral, about the financial documents that assumed I would leave everything to them when I died. As she spoke, I felt that familiar cold anger settling in my chest. Not just because of the presumption, but because of the fundamental lack of respect it demonstrated. He mortgaged my house without asking me? Mom, he was going to pay it back. That's not the point. The point is that he treated me like I was already dead, like my property was already his to use as he saw fit. I know. I know it was wrong. David knows it was wrong. We both do. And yet neither of you thought to mention this before? We were afraid you'd be upset. I laughed, and the sound was bitter. Rebecca, I found those documents when I was house-sitting for you. I saw the loan paperwork before I left for Las Vegas. You did. I did. It was one of the final straws that convinced me I needed to change my life completely. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of decades of miscommunication and misunderstanding heavy between us. Mom, Rebecca said finally, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to undo 34 years of taking you for granted. You can undo it, I said simply, but you can choose to do better going forward.
How?
By proving that the contract you wrote means something. By showing me that you see me as a person worth including, worth consulting, worth celebrating. By demonstrating that our relationship can be mutual instead of one-sided. And if I can't, if I slip back into old patterns, then you'll discover that I've developed boundaries and consequences. I won't disappear from your life, but I also won't accept being treated like a convenience again. That afternoon, after Rebecca and Sophie left, I stood in my living room and made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for the interior designer to start making changes. I was going to begin immediately. I moved the conservative artwork to the garage, rolled up the beige area rugs, and pushed the safe, practical furniture against the walls. Within an hour, my living room looked completely different, more spacious, less cluttered, full of possibility. Then I did something that would have been unthinkable a week ago. I hung one of Marcus's photographs where the biggest piece of neutral art had been. The image of me in my black evening gown, looking elegant and confident and completely at ease in the luxury restaurant. It was a statement piece that announced to anyone who entered, "The woman who lives here is not to be underestimated." My phone rang as I was admiring the effect. Charles Whitman's name appeared on the screen. "Mara, I hope you don't mind me calling. I wanted to make sure you received the flowers." "They're beautiful, Charles." "Thank you." "And the dinner invitation?" I looked around my transformed living room, at the photograph that proclaimed my metamorphosis, at the evidence of a woman who is no longer hiding her light under a bushel. "I'd love to have dinner with you," I said. "Friday sounds perfect. Wonderful. I'll make reservations somewhere special. I have a feeling you have quite a story to tell about your Las Vegas adventure." "I do indeed." After we hung up, I called Patricia, the interior designer, to move up our appointment. Then I called the personal stylist to schedule a complete wardrobe consultation. Then I called Helen to tell her about Charles and invite her to see the beginnings of my home transformation. I was building a new life from the ground up, and I was doing it at full speed. I'd spent 76 years being careful, being conservative, being invisible. I was done being careful. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of transformation that felt both exhilarating and slightly surreal. Patricia, the interior designer, arrived Monday morning with fabric samples, paint chips, and an enthusiasm that matched my own for dramatic change. "I love working with clients who aren't afraid of color," she said as we discussed my vision for the living room. "Most people want everything to be safe and neutral, but you're talking about real personality, real sophistication." "I've been safe and neutral for 76 years, I said. "I'm ready to be magnificent." We selected paint colors that would have terrified the old me. A deep wine red for the dining room, rich navy for the study, warm gold for the living room. Colors that demanded attention, that announced confidence, that refused to apologize for existing. "Your home is going to be stunning," Patricia said as she measured windows for custom curtains. "It's going to reflect a woman who knows exactly who she is and isn't afraid to show it." That's exactly what I want. Tuesday brought the personal stylist, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria who specialized in executive image consulting. She took one look at my new confidence and immediately understood what we were building. "You're not trying to look younger," she said as we went through my closet. "You're trying to look like the sophisticated woman you actually are. That's much more interesting." We spent hours selecting pieces that reflected my new identity: silk blouses in jewel tones, tailored jackets that emphasized good posture, elegant pants that moved like they were designed for a woman who owned a room. Gone were the shapeless sweaters and beige cardigans. In their place was a wardrobe fit for a woman who dined at the finest restaurants and commanded respect wherever she went. "You're going to need jewelry to match this new style," Victoria said as we reviewed the final selections. "Nothing flashy, but pieces with presence." I thought about my mother's jewelry, sitting in a safety deposit box because I never felt worthy of wearing it. "I think I have exactly what I need." Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor, David. He stood on my doorstep looking uncomfortable and slightly intimidated by the obvious changes happening to my house. Paint cans lined the entryway, fabric samples covered the dining room table, and the entire space hummed with transformation. "Mara, wow. This is quite a renovation." "Thank you."
Come in.
He followed me to the living room, now painted in warm gold with new furniture arrangements that opened up the space dramatically. The photograph of me in my evening gown dominated one wall, impossible to ignore. That's really you?" he asked, staring at the image. "It is. You look incredible, like a completely different person." "I'm the same person I've always been. I just stopped hiding." David shifted uncomfortably, clearly struggling with how to begin whatever conversation he'd come to have. "Mara, I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually.
I'm listening.
First, about the Las Vegas trip. About lying to you about the accommodations. That was wrong, and I'm ashamed we did it. What else? About the loan. About using your house as collateral without asking your permission. That was presumptuous and disrespectful, and I'm sorry. What else?" He looked surprised. "Is there more?" "David, you've been married to my daughter for 8 years. In all that time, have you ever treated me like a member of your family, or have you treated me like hired help who happens to be related to your wife?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Like hired help," he admitted finally. "And why do you think that is? Because it was convenient? Because you never complained or asked for anything for yourself? And what does that say about your character?" Another long pause. "That I took advantage of your generosity. That I never bothered to see you as a person with your own needs and desires." I nodded approvingly. "That's an accurate assessment. So the question now is, what are you going to do about it?" "I want to do better. We want to do better. Rebecca and I have been talking about how to change our relationship with you, how to treat you with the respect you deserve." "And what conclusions have you reached?" "That we need to start over. That we need to get to know you as the person you actually are, not the person we assumed you were." It was more self-awareness than I'd expected from David, and I found myself cautiously optimistic about the possibility of genuine change. "David, I want you to understand something important. I'm not the same woman I was 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to be convenient anymore. I'm not going to say yes to everything. I'm not going to put your family's needs ahead of my own without question." "I understand."
Do you?
"Because the woman you're looking at now has her own social life, her own interests, her own plans. She doesn't exist solely to serve your convenience." I'm beginning to realize that. I showed him around the house, letting him see the scope of changes I was making. The wine-red dining room that announced confidence, the Navy study that suggested serious intellectual pursuits, the master bedroom that was being transformed into a sanctuary fit for a sophisticated woman. "This is incredible," he said as we finished the tour. "You're really doing this, changing everything. I'm becoming who I was always meant to be." That evening, I had my dinner date with Charles. I chose my outfit carefully, a silk dress in deep emerald that brought out the silver in my hair, paired with my mother's pearl necklace and earrings. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the sophisticated woman from Marcus's photographs looking back at me. Charles had made reservations at Vincent Garethalt on Camelback, one of Phoenix's most prestigious restaurants. When I walked in, I felt completely at ease in the elegant surroundings, a far cry from the woman who would have been intimidated by such opulence just 2 weeks ago. "Mara," Charles said, rising to greet me, "you look absolutely stunning." "Thank you. You look quite handsome yourself."
He did.
Distinguished silver hair, intelligent eyes, the kind of understated elegance that spoke of education and culture. Exactly the kind of man the new Mara deserved. Over dinner, exquisite French cuisine paired with wines that probably cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget, I told him about my Las Vegas transformation, about discovering my own worth, about refusing to accept exclusion from my family, about finally living the sophisticated life I'd always been capable of. "That's remarkable," he said when I finished. "To have the courage to completely reinvent yourself at 76. Most people never find that kind of strength." "I don't think I reinvented myself. I think I finally became myself. And how does it feel? I looked around the restaurant, at the other diners who clearly belonged in this world of refinement and culture, at the impeccable service and exquisite food. 6 months ago, I would have felt like an imposter here. Tonight, I felt like I'd come home. It feels like I wasted the first 76 years of my life being someone smaller than I actually am. Well, Charles said, raising his wine glass, here's to making the next chapter the best one yet. To the next chapter, I agreed. As Charles walked me to my car, like a proper gentleman, he took my hand and looked at me seriously. Mara, I hope you know how extraordinary you are. Any family would be fortunate to have you in their lives.
Thank you, Charles.
That means more than you know. Would you like to have dinner again next week? I'd love that. Driving home through the Phoenix night, I thought about how dramatically my life had changed in just 2 weeks. I had a home that reflected my personality, clothes that made me feel beautiful, and a social life that included intelligent, cultured people who valued my company. Most importantly, I had a relationship with myself that was finally honest and loving. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Hope you had a lovely evening. Would you like to have lunch tomorrow? Just the two of us. I smiled as I typed back. I'd like that very much. It was progress. Small steps toward a relationship built on mutual respect rather than one-sided obligation. Whether Rebecca could sustain this new dynamic remained to be seen, but I was cautiously optimistic. And if she couldn't, well, I had a wonderful life waiting for me either way. 3 weeks after my return from Las Vegas, my house looked like something out of Architectural Digest. Patricia had worked her magic with color and texture, transforming my bland suburban home into a sophisticated showcase that announced to anyone who entered, "The woman who lives here is not to be underestimated." Gone were the beige walls and safe furniture choices. In their place was a home with personality and flair. The wine-red dining room with its crystal chandelier, the navy study lined with books and original artwork, the master bedroom that had become a sanctuary of silk and silver. "This is incredible," Helen said as I gave her the grand tour. "You've created a space that's both elegant and comfortable. It looks like you, but the most sophisticated version of you." That's exactly what I was going for. We settled in my transformed living room with glasses of wine, good wine, the kind I discovered I actually preferred, and I told her about the past few weeks, about Rebecca's contract and her apparent commitment to changing our dynamic, about David's apology and his efforts to see me as a person rather than a convenience, about Charles and our growing friendship that showed signs of becoming something more. "You've accomplished more personal growth in 3 weeks than most people manage in 3 years," Helen observed. I had a lot of catching up to do. Any regrets? I considered the question while looking around my beautiful living room. Only that I waited so long to start. The next morning brought a phone call that would test all the progress Rebecca and I had made. Sophie was sick with flu, Rebecca had an important presentation at work that she couldn't miss, and David was traveling for business. The old Mara would have immediately offered to babysit, canceling whatever plans she might have had to accommodate the family emergency. The new Mara considered her options more carefully. I had a lunch date with Charles, followed by an appointment with my new personal trainer, then a gallery opening in the evening. A full day that reflected my new, active social life. "Rebecca," I said when she called, sounding frantic, "I'm sorry Sophie is feeling poorly. Have you considered hiring a professional babysitter?" "A babysitter? Mom, she's really sick. She needs family. I understand she needs care, but I have commitments today that I'm not willing to cancel." There was a pause. Commitments?
Yes.
A lunch date, a fitness appointment, and a gallery opening this evening. You have a social life? I do indeed. And I'm not willing to sacrifice it every time you have a childcare emergency. But Mom, you never had plans before. You were always available when we needed you. That was a problem, Rebecca, not a virtue. I was available because I had no life of my own, and that wasn't healthy for any of us. Another pause, longer this time. I could practically hear her mental gears shifting as she tried to process this new version of our relationship. So, you're saying no? I'm saying that I'm not automatically available every time you need something. If you'd like my help, you need to ask respectfully and accept that I might have other obligations. Okay, she said slowly. Mom, would you be willing to help with Sophie today? I know it's short notice, and I understand if you can't change your plans. I can help with part of the day. I could come over this morning until about 11, but then I need to leave for my lunch appointment. That would be really helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. And Rebecca? Next time, please give me more notice when possible. I'm not sitting at home waiting for emergencies anymore. I'm beginning to understand that. I spent 2 hours at Rebecca's house, taking care of Sophie with the kind of attentive care I'd always provided, but with a clear endpoint. At exactly 11 o'clock, I gathered my purse and prepared to leave. Grandma, are you really going? Sophie asked from her nest of blankets on the couch. I am, sweetheart. But I'll call tonight to check on you, and maybe we can have a special grandmother-granddaughter day when you're feeling better. Just us. Just us. We could go somewhere fun, maybe have lunch at a fancy restaurant. Sophie's eyes lit up despite her congestion. Like the Palace Hotel where you stayed? Something like that. Rebecca walked me to the door, and I could see her struggling with a new dynamic between us. Mom, thank you for helping this morning. I know it wasn't convenient for you. It wasn't inconvenient, Rebecca. I love spending time with Sophie, but I also have a life that extends beyond being your emergency childcare. I'm learning that, and I think it's good. For all of us. That afternoon, I had lunch with Charles at a charming bistro downtown, followed by my appointment with Marcus Rivera, the personal trainer Victoria had recommended. Marcus specialized in fitness programs for mature adults and had an approach that emphasized strength and confidence rather than just basic health maintenance. Mrs. Joshua, he said as we began our assessment, I have to say, you move with unusual confidence for someone your age. Have you been active all your life? Not particularly, but I've recently discovered that I'm capable of much more than I thought. I can see that. We're going to build on that foundation and make you even stronger. The workout was challenging but exhilarating. For years, I'd thought of my body as something that was gradually failing, something to be managed rather than celebrated. Marcus helped me see it as a source of power and capability. Fitness at your age isn't about looking younger, he explained as we worked through strength exercises. It's about feeling powerful, about moving through the world with confidence and grace. That's exactly what I want. That evening, the gallery opening was everything I'd hoped it would be. Sophisticated people discussing art and culture, wine that complemented the conversation, an atmosphere of refinement and intellectual curiosity. I felt completely at home among the other attendees, contributing to discussions about technique and meaning with the confidence of someone who belonged in this world. Mara, Charles said as we examined a particularly striking abstract painting, you have excellent taste. Have you considered collecting art yourself? Actually, I've already started. I told him about the painting I'd purchased in Las Vegas, about my plans to fill my redecorated home with pieces that spoke to my soul rather than safe, neutral decorations. I'd love to see your collection sometime. I'd like that too. As the evening wound down, I found myself in conversation with Dr. Sarah Chen, a retired museum curator who was impressed by my insights into the contemporary pieces on display. Have you considered volunteering at the Phoenix Art Museum? She asked. We're always looking for docents with genuine appreciation for art and the ability to engage with visitors. I'd be very interested in that. Wonderful. I'll have someone from the volunteer coordinator's office contact you. Driving home that night, I reflected on how full my days had become. Not just busy. I'd been busy before, running errands and accommodating other people's schedules, but meaningfully engaged with activities and people that enriched my life. The next morning brought another test of the new family dynamic. David called to ask if I could help with the landscaping project at their house over the weekend. What kind of help are you looking for? I asked. Well, we're redoing the backyard, and we thought maybe you could watch Sophie while we work. And maybe help with some of the planning? You're good at that kind of thing. I smiled at how carefully he was phrasing the request, clearly trying to apply the lessons Rebecca had shared about treating me with respect. David, I'd be happy to spend time with Sophie on Saturday afternoon, but I'm not available to help with landscaping planning. I have my own projects to focus on. Of course. Saturday afternoon would be great. And Mara? Thank you. You're welcome. It was a small interaction, but it represented significant progress. David was learning to ask rather than assume, to express gratitude rather than taking my help for granted. Friday brought my second dinner date with Charles, this time at my favorite restaurant from before my Las Vegas transformation, but now I approached it with completely different expectations. Instead of ordering the least expensive items and declining wine, I chose exactly what I wanted and enjoyed every moment of the sophisticated dining experience. You know, Charles said over dessert, I have to ask you something that's been on my mind. Yes, this transformation of yours, it's remarkable, but it also seems almost vengeful, like you're proving a point to someone. I considered his observation carefully. It was perceptive, and it deserved an honest answer. It started that way, I admit it. My daughter excluded me from a family vacation, and I wanted to show her what she was missing. But it became something much more important than revenge. What did it become? Rescue. I rescued myself from a life where I'd forgotten I mattered, where I'd made myself so small and convenient that even my own family saw me as disposable. And now I'm living the life I always deserved but never gave myself permission to have. Charles reached across the table and took my hand. For what it's worth, I think their loss was the world's gain. If they hadn't excluded you, you might never have discovered this magnificent woman you're capable of being. That's a generous way to look at it. It's an accurate way to look at it. As Charles walked me to my car, he stopped and turned to face me with an expression that was both serious and hopeful. Mara, I need to tell you something. Yes, I'm falling in love with you. With this confident, sophisticated, remarkable woman who lights up every room she enters. I know we've only been seeing each other for a few weeks, but I haven't felt this way about anyone in years. I looked at this distinguished, intelligent man who saw me as someone worth loving and felt my heart open in ways I'd forgotten were possible. Charles, I'm falling in love with you too. With the way you see me, with the way you make me feel like the best version of myself. He kissed me then, right there in the restaurant parking lot under the Phoenix stars, and I felt like a teenager again. Not because I was trying to recapture my youth, but because I was finally experiencing the kind of romance that comes from being truly seen and valued. Would you like to come back to my house for coffee? I asked when we broke apart. I'd love that. Showing Charles my transformed home felt like sharing the most intimate parts of my new identity. He admired the sophisticated color choices, the original artwork, the way every room reflected confidence and personal style. This is incredible, he said as we stood in my wine-red dining room. It's elegant but warm, sophisticated but livable. It's exactly what I would have expected from you. It's who I really am when I stop apologizing for having opinions. We talked until after midnight, sharing stories about our lives, our dreams, our hopes for the future. Charles told me about his work as a literature professor, about the books that had shaped his thinking, about his desire to travel and see the world with someone who shared his intellectual curiosity. I told him about my teaching years, about raising Rebecca alone after her father left, about the decades I'd spent being invisible and the freedom I'd found in finally being seen. You know what I love most about you? He said as we sat on my transformed sofa, holding hands like teenagers.
What?
You're not trying to be younger or different than you are. You're just being the most magnificent version of yourself. That's incredibly attractive. I spent so many years trying to be what other people needed that I forgot who I actually was underneath all that accommodation. And now you remember? Now I remember, and I'm never going back. As Charles prepared to leave, he turned to me with a question that would have terrified the old Mara. Would you like to take a trip with me? Maybe to Europe in the spring? I've always wanted to see the French Riviera with someone special. I thought about the woman I'd been just a month ago, who would have found a dozen reasons why such a trip was impractical, too expensive, too presumptuous. Then I thought about the woman I'd become, who deserved to see the world with someone who valued her company. I'd love that, I said without hesitation. Really? Really? I think it's time I started saying yes to adventures instead of obligations. After Charles left, I stood in my beautiful living room, looking at the photograph of myself in Las Vegas that had started this whole transformation. The elegant woman in the black evening gown looked back at me, confident and radiant and completely at ease with her place in the world. I'd become her. More than that, I discovered that she'd been inside me all along, waiting for permission to emerge. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Thank you for helping with Sophie today. I know you had other things you wanted to do. I typed back. It was my pleasure. She's always worth making time for. Would you like to have lunch this week? Just to talk. I'd like that very much. It was progress. Real, sustainable progress toward a relationship built on mutual respect rather than one-sided obligation. Rebecca was learning to see me as a person with my own life, and I was learning to maintain boundaries while still being loving. The best part was that I no longer needed her approval to feel worthy. I was enough all by myself. Her recognition of my worth was a gift, not a necessity. 6 months after my Las Vegas transformation, I stood in my wine-red dining room hosting a dinner party that would have been unimaginable to the woman I used to be. The table was set with my mother's china, finally brought out of storage and used as it was meant to be, and the menu featured dishes I'd learned to prepare from watching cooking shows that I now had time to enjoy. My guests were a reflection of the rich social life I'd built. Charles, of course, who had become not just my romantic partner but my intellectual companion, Dr. Sarah Chen from the Art Museum, where I now volunteered as a docent 3 days a week, Marcus, my trainer, and his wife Elena, who had become genuine friends, and Helen, who beamed with pride every time she looked around my transformed home. Mara, this salmon is incredible, Sarah said as we enjoyed the main course. Where did you learn to cook like this? I've had a lot more time to explore my interests since I stopped living my life around other people's convenience, I said, catching Charles's eye across the table. It's amazing what we can accomplish when we give ourselves permission to prioritize our own growth, he added with a kind of supportive smile that had made me fall in love with him. The conversation flowed as easily as the wine, good wine, expensive wine, wine that reflected my new understanding that I deserved the best life had to offer. We discussed art and literature, travel plans and cultural events, the kind of sophisticated topics that fed my soul in ways I'd forgotten were possible. I have an announcement, I said as we moved to dessert. Charles and I have finalized our plans for the French Riviera in April. How wonderful! Elena exclaimed. Your first international trip together? My first international trip ever, I admitted. I spent so many years saving for imaginary emergencies that I forgot I was allowed to have actual adventures. Well, you're certainly making up for lost time, Helen said with the satisfaction of a friend who had watched my transformation from the beginning. After our guests left, Charles and I cleaned up together with a kind of comfortable domesticity that had developed over our 6 months of courtship. We moved around my kitchen like partners in a dance, completely at ease with each other and with the sophisticated life we were building together. That was a perfect evening, he said as we finished with the dishes. It really was. I can't believe I lived so many years without this kind of connection, this kind of intellectual stimulation. You're a natural hostess. You make everyone feel welcome while never diminishing your own presence. It was exactly the kind of balance I'd been working toward, gracious without being self-effacing, generous without being self-sacrificing. The next morning brought a phone call that would test how far I'd truly come in establishing my new boundaries. Mom, Rebecca's voice was tight with stress, I need a huge favor. I settled into my favorite chair in the newly decorated study, prepared for whatever crisis required my attention. What's going on? David's been offered an incredible job opportunity in Seattle, but he needs to interview there next week. It's a 3-day trip, and I can't get time off work because we're in the middle of a major project. And you need childcare for Sophie. Yes, but not just regular babysitting. She needs to be picked up from school, taken to her soccer practice, helped with a science project that's due Friday. It's a lot to ask, I know, but... Rebecca, I interrupted gently, I can't help you next week. You can't.
No.
Charles and I are leaving Tuesday for a long weekend in Sedona. We've had these reservations for 2 months. There was a pause.
Oh.
I didn't know you had travel plans. That's because you didn't ask about my schedule before assuming I was available.
Right.
Of course.
I'm sorry.
Another pause. Mom, what should I do? This job opportunity is really important for David's career. Have you considered hiring a professional nanny for the 3 days? Or asking David's family to help? A nanny would be expensive. Less expensive than David missing a career opportunity. And David's family, they're not really the hands-on grandparent types. Unlike me, you mean? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Rebecca, for years you've treated me like the convenient option because I was always available. But I'm not always available anymore. I have a life that extends beyond your family's emergencies. I'm learning that, and I think it's actually good for Sophie to see that grandparents can have their own interesting lives. It was a sign of growth that surprised me. What do you mean? She talks about you differently now. About how elegant you look, how you go to fancy restaurants and art galleries. She's proud of having such a sophisticated grandmother. I'm glad to hear that. And, honestly, I'm proud of you too. For standing up for yourself, for building this amazing life, for showing me what it looks like when a woman values herself properly. After we hung up, with Rebecca promising to figure out alternative childcare arrangements, I reflected on how different that conversation had been from similar requests in the past. The old me would have immediately canceled my plans to accommodate their need. The new me felt no guilt about maintaining my boundaries. My phone rang again almost immediately. Charles calling from his office at the university, where he still taught part-time. Good morning, beautiful. Are you ready for our Sedona adventure? More than ready. I can't wait to see those red rocks with you. I have a confession to make. Oh, I may have made dinner reservations at L'Auberge de Sedona for Wednesday night. The one with the creekside dining we talked about. Charles, that restaurant is impossible to get into. Not if you know the sommelier from graduate school and you're bringing the most sophisticated woman in Phoenix. I laughed with the kind of pure joy that had become a regular part of my life. You're going to spoil me. That's the plan.
You deserve to be spoiled, Mara.
You deserve every beautiful experience life has to offer. That afternoon, I had my regular appointment with Marcus at the gym. Our training sessions had evolved from basic fitness into something approaching athletic conditioning, and I was stronger and more confident in my body than I'd been in decades. Your posture has completely changed, he observed as we worked through strength exercises. You carry yourself like someone who owns the room. I feel like someone who owns the room. It shows. And it's inspiring to watch. I have other clients who are half your age, but don't have a fraction of your confidence. Confidence is something you build, not something you're born with. I just started building mine later than most people. After my workout, I stopped by the Phoenix Art Museum for my volunteer shift. Leading tours through the contemporary wing had become one of my favorite activities, combining my love of art with the sophisticated social interaction I'd been craving for years. Mrs. Joshua, said Amanda, the volunteer coordinator, I have exciting news. The museum board has asked if you'd be interested in joining our acquisition committee. The acquisition committee? It's a group of knowledgeable volunteers who help evaluate potential additions to the collection. It's quite prestigious, usually reserved for major donors and art experts. I'm honored, but I'm not a major donor. No, but you're something just as valuable. Someone with genuine aesthetic sense and the ability to engage with art on multiple levels. Your tours are consistently rated the highest by visitors. I'd be very interested. As I drove home that evening, I thought about how full my life had become. Not just busy, but meaningfully engaged with activities and people that enriched my existence. I had romantic love with Charles, intellectual stimulation through the museum, physical vitality through my fitness routine, and creative expression through the art collecting I'd begun. Most importantly, I had a relationship with myself that was finally honest and loving. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Grandma, can we have our special lunch this weekend? Mom said you might be able to take me somewhere fancy. I smiled as I typed back. I'd love that, sweetheart. Would you like to go to the Phoenician? They have a beautiful brunch. Is that the place with the fancy flowers and the pretty fountain? That's the one. Just you and me, dressed up like sophisticated ladies. I can't wait. Saturday morning, I picked up Sophie wearing one of my elegant silk blouses paired with tailored slacks and my mother's pearl necklace. Sophie had clearly made an effort too, wearing her best dress and the little pearl earrings I'd given her for her birthday. Grandma, you look like a movie star, she said as she buckled her seatbelt. Thank you, sweetheart. You look quite elegant yourself. The Phoenician treated us like VIP guests, seating us at a prime table overlooking the resort's famous water features. Sophie was enchanted by the luxury surroundings, but she handled herself with the kind of poise that suggested she was becoming comfortable in sophisticated environments. Grandma, she said as we shared an exquisite chocolate dessert, I want to be like you when I grow up. What do you mean, sweetheart? I want to be elegant and confident and go to fancy places. I want people to treat me with respect like they treat you. That's not about being fancy, Sophie. That's about knowing your own worth and not accepting less than you deserve. How do you learn that? By practicing. By making choices that honor who you really are instead of who other people expect you to be. Is that what you did? When you went to Las Vegas? That's exactly what I did. I stopped hiding who I really was and started being magnificent instead. Sophie nodded seriously, absorbing this wisdom like the bright child she was. I think I want to be magnificent too. I think you already are, sweetheart. You just need to remember not to hide it. That evening, Charles and I had dinner at our favorite restaurant, the place where we'd had our first official date, which had now become our regular spot for celebrating milestones and special occasions. I have something for you, he said as we finished our main course, producing a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. My heart skipped, but not with anxiety. With anticipation. Charles. Before you say anything, let me explain. This isn't a proposal, exactly. It's a promise. He opened the box to reveal a stunning antique ring, not an engagement ring, but a sophisticated piece that spoke of commitment and partnership. I know we've only been together for 6 months, and I know you're still discovering who you are in this new phase of your life. But I want you to know that I'm serious about our future together. This is a promise that I see you, I value you, and I want to build something beautiful with you. I looked at this remarkable man who had appeared in my life just as I was learning to value myself, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the timing of it all. It's beautiful, Charles. And yes, I want to build something beautiful with you too. He slipped the ring onto my right hand, where it caught the candlelight and sparkled like a symbol of all the possibilities ahead of us. To the future, he said, raising his wine glass. To the future, I agreed. Later that night, as I prepared for bed in my silk pajamas in my transformed bedroom, I caught sight of myself in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at me was elegant, confident, and completely at ease with her place in the world.
She was also happy.
Genuinely, deeply happy in a way that had nothing to do with other people's approval and everything to do with finally living authentically. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Thank you for spending the day with Sophie. She came home talking about wanting to be magnificent like her grandmother. I think that's a wonderful goal. I typed back, it's a wonderful goal for all of us. As I settled into my luxurious bed, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. It had started with hurt and anger over being excluded from a family vacation. But it had become something much more important, a complete transformation into the woman I was always meant to be. I was Mara Joshua, woman of substance and style, lover of art and literature, partner to a remarkable man, grandmother to a bright little girl who was learning that magnificence was a choice, not an accident. I was finally living the life I deserved, and it was more beautiful than I had ever dared to imagine. Thank you for joining us on Her True Stories. If this story of transformation and self-discovery inspired you, please subscribe to our channel for more stories about women who refuse to accept less than they deserve. Remember, it's never too late to discover who you really are underneath everyone else's expectations. Your magnificent life is waiting for you to claim it. See you in the next story.